Churches deliberately tear families apart on Sundays. They tell children, you are a nuisance for big church. Children are a nuisance. They make noises, they disturb, they run around. And so we need to take them out. And so we created children's church. And that sends a message. Why would I, as a little child, want to go to church if you're going to kick me out, mom and dad? Pastor, why would I do that? Whereas if you see in other traditions like the Jewish tradition or the Catholic tradition, children are there with their families. They get bored, they're noisy, parents need to shush them, but it's part of community life.
This is the In Business for Life show for Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. IBFL is a weekly podcast exploring how life-minded marketplace leaders are helping men and women choose life for their babies and forge a pro-life culture. Juan Callejas is a Guatemalan businessman and astute student of culture. Juan met IBFL's Christopher Mann this summer in Grand Rapids, Michigan, at a colloquium sponsored by the Acton Institute, a Catholic Protestant Christian think tank studying how free market economics impacts human liberty. Juan was raised and educated in Guatemala and earned an MBA from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He identifies as an evangelical Christian and offers a unique perspective as a person who was raised in Guatemala and frequently speaks and consults to clients in the United States. In Guatemala, abortion was illegal for all reasons until 1973, when life of the mother was added as an exception. In 1985, the country's constitution was rewritten to more permanently codify the pro-life position. Today, Juan talks about how a country can become more pro-life, and how that starts with the church. Here is Chris and Juan.
Well, a lot of it, I guess, has to do with, the attitudes towards children in general, family, marriage, of course, and the church has a lot of influence in how to change or shape or redirect these sorts of attitudes. And in that sense, I would say, and it's something that, sometimes it takes a little readjustment to make, I guess, on the part of us as Protestants or evangelicals. We need to look at how the Catholic Church has been consistent in its discourse throughout the ages, throughout the centuries, and has not wavered and continues to push not only for a pro-pregnancy type, but a more of a holistic life approach. And I guess that has to do with the fact that because they baptize babies, they welcome new members to the church since birth, and I guess, and they accompany them through life, through the first communion, their confirmation, marriage, etc., etc. And as evangelicals, we have much to learn about these sorts of, I wouldn't say adopting the rituals, but adopting the sort of whole life framework. They used to say back in the 50s, 60s, I guess, with the civil rights movement and all that stuff, that 11 a.m. on Sunday was the most segregated hour in the US, right? Well, it continues to be, but not in the racial sense. It continues to be in the family sense. Churches deliberately tear families apart on Sundays. They tell children, you are a nuisance for big church. Children are a nuisance. They make noises, they disturb, they run around. And so we need to take them out. And so we created children's church. And that sends a message. Why would I, as a little child, want to go to church if you're going to kick me out, mom and dad? Pastor, why would I do that? Whereas if you see in other traditions like the Jewish tradition or the Catholic tradition, children are there with their families. They get bored, they're noisy, parents need to shush them, but it's part of community life. And more importantly, children learn by imitation. They see their parents standing up, sitting down, kneeling, reciting, repeating, singing, reading the Bible, listening to the preacher. And in spite of the fact that they might not intellectually grasp everything, they do learn and they imitate and they understand that this is something that we do as a family, that I'm not going to kick you out. I'm not going to assume that you're a nuisance just because you are younger. So pro-life, I think, means that for the church as well. It means embracing the entire family. It means embracing the mess and how uncomfortable kids can be. You have 9 children. I'm the oldest of 8. We know big families are very messy, and we know how hard it is to get the entire family to go to church. And if we fight in the morning and get ready and run and eat your breakfast, get in the car, we're running late, and getting to church only to send everyone away to their classes so that mom and dad can be apart from the children for an hour or two. Was it worth it? Was it worth the fight? I'm not sure it was, because the price to pay is very high at the end. And so I think that the way the church can help is by embracing the family and allowing and allowing for the mess and affirming the family. There's an old story. I think it was a newspaper clipping way back when. I'm not sure. I have it somewhere. I think I posted it somewhere. But it basically tells a story of there was a church service, and this woman, single mom, was there with her baby, and the baby was crying at the very beginning of the sermon. And the pastor stopped his preaching and he said, I want to acknowledge 2 things before I go on. He says, 1, we have a new member in our church. It was very obvious because he was crying out loud. And 2, he wanted to acknowledge and recognize the mom for coming to church with her child.
The In Business for Life podcast is made possible by the prayer and financial support of listeners like you, and sponsors like Ambassador Solutions, providing IT staffing solutions to leading businesses, churches, and nonprofit organizations since 1989. Ambassador Solutions isn't just in business, it's in business for life. For more information, visit www.ambassadorsolutions.com.
Now, it's the church's opportunity to embrace them, to help them out, to take care of them, but not to send the mom to the nursery because the baby is a nuisance. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in rethinking that, being creative about that, and changing the way that we then address family and children and all these things. And so I think that helps us build a more pro-life stance, because it doesn't only look at the baby being born, but again, being the sort of it takes a tribe, right? It takes a clan. It takes the entire community to raise a child. And I think that's very valuable if we can, again, sort of regain that sense of community and not just sort of consumer Christianity where I come, I get my fix, and I go back home. And so there's something to learn there. And other than that is I think that people need to see families outside, sharing families. Now that the pandemic is over and all these things, what we talked about a couple of weeks ago in Michigan, the importance of voluntary associations, right? Your little leagues, your book clubs, your PTAs, and all these things where parents are involved, where children, in spite of how much they would cringe for seeing us involved in their activities and all that they see us there, and that models a way of doing family that rivals the current paradigm, of each member of the family has their own screen, or each one does their own thing, because now we don't have to wait for someone to cook the entire meal because everyone can microwave or order in or whatever. We don't even have to sit down in the living room and watch a movie together because everyone can watch the movie wherever they are. And so, regaining, and that takes leadership from parents, right? That takes guts from parents. That takes risk, and that even, calls parents to set aside their own personal agendas. I was talking with my daughters recently. I have two teenage daughters, 17 and 15. And we were talking about having children and all these things. And they were asking me what I thought about things like IVF or kangaroo babies and all these things. And one of the things that I told them was that we need to remember that children are a byproduct of the love between a man and a woman. And so they're not something I need to do for my own personal fulfillment, but rather they are an overflow of the love that we have. And if we see them as something that we need to have or that we want to have because it'll make my life, quote unquote, complete, then we destroy the whole nature of the family, of sacrifice, of service, but because we are only consuming our own fulfillment through our children. So if our children do well, we feel well. If they are good at sports, that they are sort of, we live vicariously through them, right? And so we use them as sort of consumption goods and not as individual human beings that are the product of the love between the couple that need to be then shepherded and nourished and pastored in that way, and not in a way that fulfills my personal agenda, which is tough because we all have big dreams for our kids, and we all have all these sorts of great ideas of what they should do, where they should go, and all that. But at the end of the day, we are raising, hopefully, free and responsible and virtuous human beings that can make their own choices, but that they are not there to fulfill our dreams, but that they are there to fulfill God's purposes for them. And so I think that's also a way that we can change the way we view family and marriage and children and all of these things.
The In Business for Life podcast is made possible by the prayer and financial support of listeners like you, and sponsors like resermon.com, repurposing sermon content into the public square by sermon to podcast, sermon to book, sermon to social media, and more. Resermon isn't just in business, it's in business for life. For more information, visit www.resermon.com.
None of these are very sexy solutions because they are not, atomic bomb sort of solutions that, you can just lob it over and everyone's going to change. It takes grassroots, it takes patience, it takes conversations. We might not even see the results, right? But again, we're not called to reap the results. We might be called to plant the seed. We might be called to till the land. God is the one that grants the growth, and someone else will be called to reap those results. Our call is to be faithful where we are and trust in God and hope for the best.
The In Business for Life podcast is made possible by the prayer and financial support of listeners like you. If you are not a regular In Business for Life supporter, please consider beginning today by visiting www.inbusinessforlife.org and clicking the Give button to make a contribution. In Business for Life is a nonpartisan, 501c3 not-for-profit organization based in Indianapolis. Contributions are considered by the Internal Revenue Service as deductible for tax purposes. Please be sure to like this program and give it 5 stars in the Apple Podcast Store or your favorite podcast platform. Sign up for episode reminders via email, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and more by visiting the homepage of www.inbusinessforlife.org. Thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you next week.